Lou's sister phoned. Was she still seeing her funny chap? Lately he was all Maya asked about. Indeed, she had begun to preach, which Lou rather resented. But since she had no one else to discuss him, or it, the whole business, with, often she weakened and confessed. Yes, she said, I'm seeing him next week, as a matter of fact. And what will it be this time? Maya asked. A long boat to the Arctic Circle, lying on deck under the aurora borealis? Lou said it wouldn't be anything so idle, but what it would be, she didn't know. She never knew. That was what annoyed Maya. She said it was demeaning, always waiting for surprises, like a little girl, always waiting for the next treat. But she wasn't a little girl, she was a grown woman, time running out, etc., etc. Life's not all treats, you know. At which point Lou asked after the children, how was Chloe's piano? Did William like his new school? Was she, Maya, still doing all the fetching and carrying? How was Henry? Very busy? Was she seeing anyone else? As a matter of fact, I am, said Maya. Time's running out. I do want a life of my own. And then she reverted in what sounded like real concern to her sister, her life, her infrequent meetings with the man she, Maya, thought very dubious. All I mean is, does he mean it? Mean what? When he takes you off doing these extraordinary things, is he serious? He's very serious, said Lou. Or rather, it's serious. It is very serious. But I suppose you mean, does he love me? Will he marry me? Will we buy a house? Will he have children with me? That sort of thing. You love him, that's obvious, said Maya, and if he doesn't love you, he shouldn't keep doing things with you that make you love him more. Obvious? Keep doing? More? Lou got tangled up and stopped listening. She wondered, did men ever talk about women like that, hour after hour, about their women? She couldn't imagine that they did. She supposed some of them boasted. She couldn't imagine Owen talking to another man about her and boasting. For one thing, what did he have to boast about in that sense? Maya, she said, coming back in, I sometimes think we're no better off than Jane Austen's women, and men aren't better off either, the way you talk. They mustn't do anything that might arouse in us expectations they cannot or will not fulfill, and if they do, they are bad men, and we are fools. I only mean you should find out if he's serious, Maya said. Or what else is he after? Power? You worry me, Lou. You are on your own too much. Lou was right to say that a long boat under the aurora borealis would not have been Owen's thing. Mostly when he wrote to suggest they might meet, it was to do something he described as his job, or his job, sort of. For example, during a bad fire on the moors, he asked, the minute she arrived, would she like to climb up with him and see the damage? It was still burning when they got there, and the usual roads had been closed by the police, but he knew a way round from upwind, luckily enough, and they followed the fire as it cropped its way through the heather. Funny having residual flames about your ankles and kicking through hot ash. One discovery pleased him particularly. He had come across a poem about a hill fire in which the fire was described as advancing over all but leaving springs in hoof marks. In Lou's opinion, Owen did not give enough credence to poetry, but when they found several such damp survivals, he had to concede that, for once, a poem told the truth. Anyway, a week after Maya's phone call, there they were, Lou Johnson and Owen Shepherd in the limestone country, and it was not going well. Miserably she trailed along behind him like a child in disgrace, not knowing why, sorrowful and furious at the rules she did not understand but hated and despised anyway, whether she understood or not. Why had he asked her? Why had she been fool enough to come? They were trailing along the busy street of a small town, and she supposed it must be back to the railway station he was leading her, and there, courteous and cold, he would see her onto a train, and that would be that. Well, so be it. Still, she was miserable. Then suddenly he halted, turned to her and said, "Forget all that. Here's this." And he took her first by the arm, then very firmly by the hand, and stepped with her off the busy street into an alleyway between two ordinary shops. The way was not surfaced like a modern street, but roughly cobbled, and before long not even that. The limestone itself was underfoot. and the alley had become a track, rising. So the street had a very thin border, only one row of shops, and you could step between them, if you knew the gap, into this. Owen said nothing. He seemed to be concentrating. He had on his face the expression of a man concentrating hard to get something right, to make something come true under his feet and before his eyes. But he held her hand tightly, as though that should be proof enough, and she shouldn't worry. He might rather be there concentrating alone. They went on in silence. The way climbed, soon it was more a deserted stream bed than a path. They climbed under hazels and alders in a mossy light, and the noise of the town quietened behind them and below. The town continued in her consciousness for a while, lingering as a murmur at the back of her mind. Then she forgot it. The first words he said were, "The water's just underneath." Stepping off a public street into a quite different space and time was something Owen had done with Lou before. Once it was in the spa town in late summer. He had written and suggested they meet. She agreed, they met. They were walking along. It was going well between them in a friendly sort of way. He seemed glad of the occasion, sure of it, and quite suddenly guided her off the street through a broken door. It wouldn't open. They squeezed into a long walled garden. The place astonished her. Only later, not having heard from him for weeks, did she again rather resent his ability to astonish her. Whenever Owen fell out of her favour, she declared him, almost in her sister's voice, to be playing a very calculated game with her, the chief interest of which, from his point of view, was power. But the garden did astonish her. It belonged to a very big house whose many eyes and mouths were shut with steel against the vandals. Owen's interest lay at the far end in the apple orchard. "Scrumping," he said, before the developers grubbed them up. And out of his rucksack he took several plastic bags and handed Lou a couple. The trees had been neglected. They wore mistletoe, moss and lichen on many dead branches as the marks of it. But nevertheless, keeping their side of the bargain, they had cropped. "A few of each sort, if you wouldn't mind," Owen said. The old lady collected, and some you can't find any more. Quietly they moved through the apple light, plucking fruit that was shining pearl and shades of red and gold and underwater green. Owen could name some, but had a friend, he said, who would identify the rest and grow their progeny from pips. When he took out his notebook and became very serious, Lou drifted back to where the wreckage of a kitchen garden began and sat there on the orchard frontier under the last tree, eating an apple whose name perhaps only Owen's friend would know. The flesh and juice and sweetness without a name gave her a thoughtful pleasure that had an undertow of sadness in full view of the stopped and blinded house. And now, climbing the stream bed, Lou acknowledged that he must once again have schemed for an effect. Surely he knew very well where the particular gap was between the shops. But because of the bad mood and her trailing behind him dejectedly, they might have forfeited the chance. Their being in the stream bed, after all, was a mercy, and when he said that the water was just underneath, she felt a rush of affection for him and gratitude that he had wrenched himself out of his bad humour and rescued the good opportunity for them both. The climb steepened. Owen went ahead. Then the course of the stream, the dampness, its covering of trees, its softening and adornment by moss and pennywort and fern, gave out, and they had an open space before them, and lapwings flapping up raggedly into a blue sky. Late afternoon, some distance off was a grey-white scar. "It's there," he said. What it was, Lou did not ask. "I was 16 when I came here last," he said, "on my own. I doubted I would find the place again. I thought the gap would be filled in years ago." His happiness touched her. "And the lapwings still. That's a blessing. They are so diminished nowadays. How I love limestone."